Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Return to the Realm, a rereaders podcast for the Realm of the Elderlings series by Robin Hobb. I'm Kayiu, here with Alex and Leah, and today we're going to be going through chapters 26 through 29 of Ship of Magic. Um, so we've been talking about stuff starting to happen for the past few episodes, and this is where some shit really goes down. Um, Bingtown is considering seceding from Jamila. Um, Althea ends up quote unquote failing in her goal of obtaining a ship's tag, and her and Brashen have a falling out. Meanwhile, Wintrow is stuck in slave hell, waiting for his father to buy him back. So, lots of dramatic happenings in this section. Um,
Also,
and before we get started, because I need to get ahead of Alex this time.
I have something
This
else.
This is a Spoilers All podcast, which includes not only the Live Ship Traders series, but also all 16 books in the Realm of the Elderlings cycle. So if you haven't read all of those and don't want to be spoiled, click off now and then come back once you've done so.
I think we're doing chapters 24 through 28.
We are. My
Not
bad.
26 through 9.
Cool. Yeah.
But I
My
think
bad.
that's how we would have been if we didn't have such a long episode a couple episodes back.
Right.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense. I think I just had that in my mind. And I don't think anyone will be confused because it's in the title. Hopefully.
Yeah,
Maybe. So,
it's fine.
yeah. Okay. So chapter 24, The Rainwild Traders. This episode or this chapter is from Malta's perspective. We see her, Ronica, and Kefria go to the meeting hall of Bingtown, where all the trader families have been convened by Yanni Kupris. Johnny Kupris. I'm just gonna call her Johnny Kupris. Um, one of the Rainwild traders, who essentially says, "Look, things have gone too far with the new traders. Um, we need to take a stand. We tell the Satrap to remember his promise to Bingtown, or we secede." Um, and getting this whole event through Malta's perspective is very interesting, and I think we're going to have a lot to talk about that. And at the tail end of this chapter, we meet Johnny's son, Rain, who has a little romantic meeting with Malta.
I do not see what Rain sees in Malta. She must be really hot because basically all she does is be like, let me look at your jewels. And he's like, oh my god, I'm in love with her.
Yeah. I was expecting there to be. I was like, maybe I just misremembered. Maybe there's a little bit more.
Maybe he thought she was cute and I don't think he has very much experience with women either, because he spends his time in the collapsed elderling buildings and stuff. So he probably doesn't have the best social skills anyways. So just the fact that Malta's coming up and talking to him, it probably is something special for him, especially because she's a Bingtown trader daughter. She's not just some rain wild girl who he's seen all the time and doesn't think is that cute.
Mm-hmm. I think it's literally just that she comes up and talks to him. He's like, whoa.
Yeah.
She's not horrified of me, even though she secretly is.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, one thing that struck out to me is I feel like even though Malta at this point in the series is still really annoying, um, she has reasonable perspectives on some of the stuff that's happening. Like Devad says, it's almost enough to make a man wish for slavery here in Big Town. A slave knows that his master's goodwill is his only hope of comfort and well-being, and it makes him pay attention to his orders. And it's that is disgusting, and the fact that no one pushes back on it is crazy. And Malta's yeah, it's kind of spineless how Ronica is so anti-slavery at home, but won't actually take a stand for her beliefs. And it shows how complicit the Vestrits are in everything that's happening.
Yeah, Veronica's a little bitch. Like,
I really don't like her in this like section.
I remember really rooting for her on my first read, being like, Veronica's the only reasonable one. Like, once she realizes that Kyle's a piece of shit. But on this read, I'm like, no, she's a bad parent. She's a bad grandparent. She talks a big game behind closed doors, but then, like, won't say anything otherwise. She's so anti-new trader, but then she won't say anything during the trader council meetings. Or, like, she doesn't pick a side. Yeah, I don't like her.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Bitch
She was
Malta.
Yeah,
She's so mean to Malta in this chapter specifically. Like,
I felt really bad for Malta in this chapter. Like, she's not even, especially at the beginning, she's not even, like, being naughty. She's just being a kid. But it shows, like, she's basically neglected because she really has to act out to get any sort of attention either way, good or bad.
yeah,
Because everyone's super dismissive of her. Like, she'll say something and they just ignore her. Or, like, there's a part that made me really sad where it says, sometimes Malta felt her name was a sort of club. Anytime either of them said it, they expressed anger or disgust or impatience with the world.
I know, that was freaking sad.
That's really sad.
Yeah, I have noticed that Malta's not that, like, at least as far as we've gotten, she's not that annoying. Like, I don't hate her, and it's not like I can't stand her like I could the first time. I don't understand why I hated her so much, but I think, like, she gets worse when Althea comes back. Like, I think that we're at the beginning of it. Like, I remember her being super, like, getting
She's
stuff
mean
from
to
Althea's
Althea.
review and hating her then, but, like, she's really not awful right now. And everyone is being horrible to her. So it kind of makes sense why she's like playing the victim a little bit sometimes.
I think on this read, I see more of like why she is the way she is, so then I don't hate her as much.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I feel like I was like getting there, and then this chapter I was like, man, no, Malta's still in like her annoying phase. I think like
She
I was
isn't-
reading y'all's notes, and I'm like, I should be giving her some slack, but instead it feels like instead of like being annoyed at Kefria and Ronica and giving her slack as a result, I'm just annoyed at everyone. I'm just like, all of you suck, and I think that on one hand, it's kind of hypocritical of me because I'm like I'm willing to forgive Wintrow and Althea when they're annoying because they're young and Malta's also young. But I think for me, what makes it frustrating is it feels like compared to Althea and Wintrow, Malta has like no self-reflection or self-awareness, and so it's just like
Not
it
right
makes
now.
it more frustrating because it's like even though I know she ends up growing, it's like it feels like she's not going to, and I'm just like ah.
I had sympathy for her a lot in this chapter. I actually felt really bad for her in this chapter. But in the chapter where she steals the dream box, it's harder to have sympathy because that's like the first time they really explain to her like why she can't have it. They're like, if you open this, it will be that you're courting him. But she's like so greedy that she won't even listen to them. Whereas a lot of the times when she's reacting that way, it's because she doesn't understand where they're coming from and they don't bother to explain it to her. They're just like, no.
Mhm. And the way she like manipulates them, where it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like she would have been totally reasonable and actually crying in that scene.
Mhm.
Like, if she actually was like processing what they were saying, and like, it makes sense that she would be like hurt by it because they haven't been treating her the best. But instead, she understands that that's how she should feel, and then uses that to manipulate them. And it's like that's so fucked up.
It's almost sociopathic. It's like how, sociopaths will like go to therapy so that they can understand the way that other people process emotions and then they can mimic it. That's like something Malta would do.
I was kind of rooting for Malta when she stole the box. Because I'm like, they're being so freaking rude and snooty. And like, she should just take it. And I know that she shouldn't. And obviously, it makes sense why she shouldn't. But honestly, like, there's no good way for them to reject it. There would be no way where they reject it and like something good comes about it, or like it's well received rejection. Like, I think that the Kupras family is too high up that it would definitely still be a very big slight on them, and it would look bad on the best rights. And I also know where it goes, so I'm like definitely not mad, and I'm like, come on to do it.
I was more mad the first time because I thought she was making like a critical error that was going to lead to something very bad. But now I know that it doesn't, so it's like not as big of a deal.
Yeah, also like knowing Rain makes it a lot because Rain is like Rain acts like a goddamn vampire in these 2 chapters. He's like
He does.
he
Yeah.
does not act like himself. It's so weird.
Yeah.
Because like we know he's the lovable, awkward, like weirdo boy who like goes and hangs out in caves and shit. But here
Yeah.
he's like, oh Malta, oh, look at me, I'm the experienced worldly Rainwild person. And it's like, no, you're not. Shut the fuck up.
Right. You may act like you're cool, but we know better.
Mhm. But yeah, I feel like Malta is like the most childlike in this chapter than we've seen in a while. Both in terms of like being very understandable, but also being very annoying at the same time. Like when she's like blurting out like your flame jewels look expensive, or like or they're really beautiful, they're expensive. It's just like, yeah, okay, we've all seen a kid like say something like without like that much tact at some point or another, like totally.
Hmm.
Um and also the way she's like fidgeting around, it really reminds me of um my parents would take me to a bunch of these Indian classical concerts because every winter they'd have like a big Indian classical concert thing, and I hated them. I never wanted to be there, and I but they couldn't like leave me at home alone because I was too young, so I had to be like dragged along all the time. And they'd like bribe me, and they'd be like, I'll buy you this book and you can read it during the concert if you like come with us and like don't put up a fuss." So I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't bring the freaking ledger books or whatever for Malta to calculate, because it's clear that like, they're not paying attention to her or explaining what's going on. They're not engaging her in what's happening. So, of course, she's not going to care about it.
Mhm.
And then it's useless for them to bring her in the first place, then, if they're not going to teach her. And then they get annoyed with her because she's there. Like, Ronica says, Delotrell is not here, she pointed out acidly. Her parents had the good sense to leave her at home, which is where I wish you were also. Like,
That's just a dick move.
you should have left her home then if you wish that she was there. You're the one who dragged her ass there. She did not want to go. For sure.
And like they have Nana and Raish at home. It's not like she would be like home alone or whatever.
Yeah, they wanted her to go to learn and like get the traitor insight, but then they're annoyed when she's there and they're not helping her learn any of the stuff either. Like, they're Ronica is still not a good grandma. As much like, it's one thing to admit that you did poorly raising your kids and your grandkids, but it's another thing to admit that you did poorly and then strive to do better. Like, she says, "Oh, I have to do better," but then she doesn't do anything.
She's like locked into the same patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
It genuinely feels like Ronica was never a kid. It's like
Yeah. She was just an old lady.
She also, like, when we get her section, she's never thinks back to, like, any time in her life pre being married. So it kind of feels like she just started, like, once she had kids. And there was no
Flame turned
backstory.
on when she was
Yeah.
married.
Right.
She like says one thing about like growing up at the house that like they sent some of their servants to live in or something like that. But I think that's literally the only thing that we really get from pre-marriage days.
Like,
Yeah.
how were you as a teen, Ronica? I feel like, come on now.
I know
Ron-
she should definitely have a little bit more like empathy.
Mhm. Ronica definitely would have been the kid who's like, "Teacher, you didn't assign us any homework."
Mm, the one that everyone hated.
Mhm.
That's also Kefria for sure. Right now, still, I think.
Kefria sucks so bad.
Yeah. And I don't remember her getting like very much better. Like, yes, she gets a little bit better, but like, I feel like she still kind of sucks all the way through.
Hmm.
Kefra just doesn't get as much of a arc as Ronica does. Her like, her arc is honestly kind of rushed. It's just sort of like realize Kyle sucks, realize I haven't been doing much around here. Okay, done. And like that
Hmm.
all happens like so quickly in the first book. Um, yeah, this is also I think the first mention of Jidsen, which is the magic elderling metal thing that like glows in certain conditions and also like produces a humming sound if you smack it, and like a bunch of places in Kelsingor are made out of it. Is there like a real world analog to Jidsen, or is it just like the magic metal TM?
I think it's just magic metal.
Is that the stuff that, like, when you walk into the room, it will, like, light up the room if you touch it?
Yep, yep.
Hmm.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
I
it's like
think.
on the
I
character or
don't think
something.
there's anything else. I picture it like the metal's heating up again. So like wherever it gets touched, it like turns red or like a nice heated metal color.
Hmm.
I picture it like, when you're on an airplane and it's like an overnight flight or a nighttime flight and they turn all the lights on, they illuminate the aisles. So like there's those rows of lights like showing where the aisle is. That's how I picture it. And I'm like, I'm sure it's much more fancy than like airplane
Definitely.
lights.
Yeah, for
Honestly,
sure.
it could just be airplane lights, just but like maybe like a more like soft sodium color. That's how I'd picture it. Because to them that would be like fantastical. It's like you can make light happen in what pattern?
Yeah.
Excuse me? Um, I think like one big part of this chapter is just like Johnny bringing up the fact that we're gonna secede, like we should probably secede from Jamila, and I love the section after that where like it's just quotes from random trader people all expressing their own perspectives on it. It's like it's a really quick but effective way to show like there's so many facets of this that people like that would matter to people or that people care about that are like immediately thought of by all of these people. It like feels so much more real because it's not just like this very binary thing. It's like it's a complicated decision and people are treating it as such.
Hmm. I wish that Malta stayed around a little bit longer because I would have loved to hear kind of the solutions that they came up with, or like at least what they, I don't know, brainstormed at near the end of the meeting, but she had to leave and be a little bit flirty, so we
I
didn't
would
get
have
the
left
rest of it.
too. If I was a kid, I would have left too. I'd have been like, I don't understand what they're talking about or care, and I'm bored.
Yeah.
And whenever she does try to understand something, like
Yeah,
Veronica kept her like, "Shut up!
if
We're
she
trying to
asks,
listen."
right.
Yeah, my last note for this chapter was there's a small scene at the end between all the serpents, and I think it's Malkin and Shriver have a little conversation in which uh, Malkin reveals for the first time a link between serpents and dragons, but it's in like serpent language where he's talking about the lack and the plenty or whatever. But if you can decipher that, this is the first time a reader would have an explicit like confirmation of that connection.
Yeah.
I already
wonder-
don't remember that.
I wonder if Julia will pick up on some of that. But she doesn't really know that real dragons are a thing in this world. There's only the stone dragons. So maybe the first time readers don't realize that dragons can be a thing.
I know.
Which is such a wild thing to say for a fantasy series. Like,
I know, right?
When I jumped to Tawny Man after Farseer because I didn't know that these, like, I knew they existed, but I didn't think it was part of the same series. So I like missed that Tintaglia was a thing, and then she like just comes out in Tawny Man. And I was like, what the fuck? There's like actual dragons now? Like real life ones? I thought there were just stone dragons in this series.
Yeah, it's weird.
and it makes like the whole thing with Selden coming and talking to Fitz like so much like crazier because Selden's like, yeah, the Queen of Dragons wants to talk to you, and Fitz is like, sounds swell. Anyways.
I completely like glazed over that whole part on my first read because I just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like for a first time reader of this series, I feel like there's like it's just so hard to like come up with like the serpent dragon life ship connection. Even though there's like so many clues. It's just like so out there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Julia figured out that Amber was like the fool, or at least guessed that Amber was a white. Like or like related to the fool. I feel like
Especially
that's
the way that Althea sees her.
Right. But yeah, like making the connection between the ships and dragons is like such a leap.
Yeah.
That you wouldn't ever logically put together. Like I didn't figure it out ahead of time. I don't know how I could have. Like on a reread, it's obvious. But
I think the only way is like if you're really smart about it and you like connect the idea of going into the dragon or into your stone dragon with going into the live ship, then you could maybe make a connection there where it's like, oh yeah, live ships are like the stone dragons. And then when you learn more about like the dragon life cycle, you're like, hold on, what if? But yeah. But yeah, that's all I had to say for this chapter. What about y'all?
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much all my notes were about Malta and feeling bad for her.
Same. I feel like it's the opposite. So like we're very team Malta, even though she's annoying and stuff. And Kayiu's not. And then with Starling, we are so like, I hate her. And then you're the only one to like.
You
give
have to
her
make
credit and be
the
like,
Starling
"What?"
defense squad.
Yeah.
Well, see,
And
and
we're
it's
definitely
weird because like I
Malta.
know Malta's gonna be good, so it's not like I like hate her. Well, it's just like in the moment where I'm reading this, I'm like, I can't divorce it from the words I'm reading on the page. Like,
Yeah. That's understandable.
yeah, but I think I am like recognizing that Kefria and Ronica are like so much, or at least Ronica are so much worse than I realized the first time I was reading.
Same.
I liked Ronica my first read, so I did not expect to hate her so much on my reread. Like,
I know. I think I was
I think
rooting
it's just
for
like
her the whole
everyone
time.
else around her explicitly sucks, and so it's harder to pick
Yeah.
up on her implicit suck.
Right. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think I was so focused on hating Malta on my first read that I couldn't hate anyone else besides like the obvious hateable people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like fucking Torg.
Ugh.
And Kyle
And Kyle and Kennit.
and Kenneth.
Kennit I didn't hate in this book because I didn't
No.
understand him yet.
Same.
Really? Okay.
I really
I
liked Kennit. He was one of my favorite characters until everything happened with him and Althea.
okay.
Yeah,
Like
once
I
he
like
does
him as a character, but as like
yeah.
a
Yeah.
person, he like really frustrated me. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he definitely makes for interesting chapters to read. Unlike Malta, where the first time I was reading it felt like a slog.
Yeah, I almost rage quit reading this book because of Malta on my first read.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, I cannot. But I think it's because my sister was like also an awful teenager. My sister was like 15 at the time, and she was horrendous. So it was just like, I can only handle so much. I'm trying to escape my reality by reading this book. And
I
it's,
can't have another awful teen in my
yeah,
life too.
yeah.
Anyways, speaking about awful parallels with reality, let's go to chapter 25, Candletown, in which there are absolutely no connections to be drawn to the real world. Um,
Perfect.
um, in this chapter, Althea and Brashen are both deciding on what their next steps are now that the Reaper is done with its hunting season. Althea goes to get her ship's tag, but the captain realizes her true identity and
Because she
uh,
tells it to him.
yeah, she tells it.
Yeah.
She essentially tells it to him, um, and in a fit of sexism, he decides not to give her her ship's tag at all.
Which sucked.
Mhm.
Sexism.
And yeah, and Brashen is feeling great and is thinking that he's gonna have a great time, and he and Althea are gonna continue sailing, but ends up finding out what happened to Althea as well, and they both commiserate in their despair, kind of, before she like rejects him and walks away, and because Brashen was kind of dumb.
She is kind of mean to him though, because he obviously likes her, and she knows that he likes her, and instead of just being like, no, I'm not going to meet you, I don't want to, she's like, maybe.
I
And then
know.
and then is like annoyed at him for having hurt feelings that she didn't meet him. Like, I felt a little bit bad for him. Not as bad as I felt for her having to go through all that shit, but
Yeah. I also feel like her doing that to Brashen is just because she doesn't want to admit that she has feelings for him too. Or is feeling like something other than just like neutral towards him.
Mhm.
right.
And so she's like, if I don't acknowledge that he's feeling something for me, then I don't have to acknowledge my feelings to myself either. And we can just go on pretending like we're just shipmates.
I agree.
I don't have to be vulnerable ever again. That
Yeah.
worked out in a healthy fashion.
I don't know why she feels that way. Like, is it just because she doesn't think that it's safe to feel feelings like this? Or,
I think probably every experience that she's had with like relationships is just like having sex with somebody and then never talking to them again, or like being like she feels abandoned by that one, the guy
Devin?
that what's his name?
Devin, I
Devin.
think?
Yeah, yeah. Like he just like sleeps with her and then immediately leaves. So I wonder if she thinks like if I let myself feel these feelings, then like I won't have any type of relationship with him anymore.
Mhm. And she's been like burned by caring about people. Like she cared about Kefria and then Kefria betrayed her. She cared about Devin, Devin betrayed her. Um, she thought she could trust her family, and then in her eyes, they all betrayed her, other than Ephraim.
Well, I think that even she does feel betrayed by him even. And I'm sure she harbors like irrational betrayal, like feelings of betrayal from him dying. Because she's like, you were my dad, you weren't supposed to die this early.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess that does make sense.
There was a line that made me feel really bad for her where I don't remember what point this is at. It's obviously like after she gets kicked off the Reaper, but it says, I want to go home, she thought miserably. Somewhere I am safe and warm and people know me. But no, home was none of those things. Not anymore. It's like that hits really close to home because anytime you're in like an uncomfortable situation or you feel alone or you feel miserable and abandoned, all you want is to like be home and safe with your family. And she like literally can't even, like, home is in the past. She can't get back to that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this episode is the section, all of the sections that I've been dreading reading combined. Because I was dreading reading Althea getting turned away from the Reaper, and I was dreading reading Wintrow becoming a slave, and like all of those happened in this section. And I was just like, oh, yay.
It's a
One
tough
after the other.
Joy.
I do feel bad for Althea, but I am kind of proud of her because she does learn and grow a little bit. And she even admits that she knows she's not ready to captain Vivacia, but she needs to get her ship back.
Mhm.
So I'm proud of her for that.
Yeah, and I think this chapter is interesting because we see her grow in that way, but also she's still like fiercely jealous / possessive of Vivacia, where she's like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean you care about Vivacia, Brashen? You aren't family."
Yeah, that's a bit much.
She like refuses to acknowledge that Brashen lost everything the same as she did.
Hmm.
Like,
If not more.
right, he literally like lost where he lived, his job, like anyone that was in support of him or on his side in the world. Like, Althea can
Their
go back
arcs
to
are like
family.
remarkably similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Except-
Even down to the way that like when things go bad, they get into like this self-destructive like who cares about tomorrow mode.
Yeah.
them
That's,
both spending all their money all the time makes me really anxious. It's like
it
worse.
stresses
It's
me out.
even worse than Fitz, and Fitz is reckless with his money.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, they are very bad with it. There was a section later on in this, in like the last chapter or the chapter before, where Brashen talks about like not having any money left, but he still has a little bit of Sinden. And he's like, oh, I'm almost done with my Sinden. I'm like, the fact that he cares more about rationing his Sinden out so that he can make it last as long as he can and doesn't give a shit about his money, like, alarm bells, Brashen. What are you doing with your life? The fuck?
It's crazy because like in this chapter he's like, I got paid out, I can live like a king, and then smash cut to next chapter he's like, I've been broke for 3 days, I haven't had a place to sleep.
Yes.
It's
And he
like,
was talking about
homie?
saving his money, and like he doesn't do any of that.
he never does it. I did notice something about Brashen in this chapter. The first time when he's on Paragon and he's giving Althea advice, he says, you should go north to the Six Duchies. They let women be on ships there, blah, blah, blah. And he says it again in this chapter, but this time he says, we could go north. Like, he would
I
go
love
with her. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's in love.
For sure he is. For
He's
sure.
so... Mhm.
He's
I-
willing. I mean, he doesn't really have anything to lose, but like he's willing to completely leave his homeland for her.
Yeah. And and any chance of like ever working on a live ship again and everything like that. Like,
He's willing to go where they don't even put glass on their windows.
yeah, yeah.
Just for Althea.
He's willing to live with the barbarians.
Mhm.
just for his girl.
And yeah, and I feel like they understand each other like so well, but like the places where there are miscommunications hurt so much more because of that. Where it's like Brashen immediately gets when he's like he puts in a good word with her for the captain, and she's like, "You don't think I can get on my own merits?" And he's like, "No, wait, hold on. I said that wrong. I genuinely think you did a good job." And then she's like, "Oh, thank you." And she's like, "Oh, well, I mean it this time, but like it's awkward because I just said it sarcastically." And
Yeah.
there's the other part where Althea, she like realizes she hurt him, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that, but I get that I did it now, even though I didn't realize it before."
Mm-hmm.
And like there's like those are the two that like I remember, but there's a bunch of other moments, especially with like Ratchet realizing that like he fucked up, and oh yeah, they're just they get each other's like mannerisms and moods so well.
Yeah. And that's got to be partially like just them living close together on like Vivacia for so long.
For sure. Oh, yeah, one of my notes in this chapter is something that like I didn't think about that much the first time I read this, and but it's kind of impressive slash interesting how much detail goes into the logbooks, where at least for the logbook of the Reaper, where it's like this is supposed to be not a high quality ship with a captain who's got shabby quarters, but despite that, and they have like a large crew, but despite that, the captain's logbook has like kept a close enough eye on Althea that even though she's an unremarkable ship's boy, they have like different parts of her performance throughout the trip. Especially after times that would have been chaotic and people probably wouldn't have remembered, like the serpent attack. So it's like, even though the captain is a complete dick, I think the reflection is less on like that specific ship and more on like the
Culture.
the
Yeah.
culture that goes into it, especially. And I think it's really interesting to contrast that to stuff like Wintrow's like they're just sailors, and it's like, yeah, sure, but like they would have sunk by now if there wasn't a system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was my last note for this chapter.
I wonder, that just made me think of, this isn't like related to this section, but there's a part where Paragon mentions that he can't remember stuff since they took his logbook.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that they really need the logbook to remember things? Or if he's just using that as an excuse? Because why would a live ship need the logbook?
I think it's genuine, and I think it's sort of like I don't even remember why, but like I remember it being genuine.
Like if it's in them, they can absorb the knowledge from it somehow?
Yeah, I think it's just like weird magic metaphor thing, but like
It could also be like kind of their long-term memory is the logbooks. And then like it helps them keep like a hold of themselves as a live ship, and then otherwise like without their logbooks, it's easier for like the dragon part of them to take over or something like that.
I will accept that.
I could be misremembering, and it could just be Paragon lying. I feel like I remembered. Like I feel like they
I
like.
feel like I do too.
I
If
think
I
they like.
meet Robin Hobb, I will ask for
Yes.
confirmation.
This entire podcast is just a scheme to like think of questions to ask Robin Hobb at conventions.
Yes.
Right.
We all need to track her down.
This is a distributed way to get people to ask our questions to Robin Hobb.
Yes.
What sucks
Tell
is
me
that
the answers.
I had the opportunity to possibly ask her a question, but it was before I knew who she was.
Before
So,
you loved her works.
yep. So, if basically 2014 version of me sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. That was your Malta time.
Yeah.
We've all had a Malta phase.
Oh, for sure.
And anyone who says they haven't is lying or is still in their Malta phase.
Or
For sure they're still in
they're
it.
still in it.
For sure.
They have no self-awareness.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My last note is just I feel so bad for Althea for being ashamed of enjoying having sex and like having sex with Brashen. Like Kefria definitely messed her up in the long run by like shaming her the first time. And like Althea even says it was embarrassing that she enjoyed what they had done, and all the more because he knew she had enjoyed it. Like, I just feel so bad for her. That must really suck. Not even being able to like enjoy it. I'm sure she was like kind of thinking in the back of her head, like being ashamed of it even in the moment. But she just like kept going.
Or like she wasn't thinking about it only because she was like uninhibited by Sinden plus drunk plus
Yeah.
good wound.
Yes.
It
Brain damage,
shows like
basically.
how deep the damage of that purity culture can do to people.
Especially with your family enforcing it too. Like, I think if Kefria had accepted her and been like, oh my gosh, like, are you okay? Instead of calling her a slut and stuff, then she would think about sex so much differently because your older siblings are your role models, sometimes more than your parents, even, especially in situations like that. And then the way that Kefria reacts was just like horrible.
Like obviously Althea felt safer going to Kefria than she did going to her parents, when in reality Kefria may have been the worst one to go to.
Yeah.
Mhm. And I'm sure that like part of the reason she's also like thinking about that again is because the captain was like, "You whore! How many people did you just like?" It probably brought back like reminiscent of what Kefria did.
Yeah,
Well, she's
for
like,
sure.
she wished that she could say none, but she had slept with Brashen, and then she probably feels like, oh, is that why I got to stay on the ship? Like, not overtly, but maybe it's like a subconscious
Mm.
thing, you know?
Yeah.
Because she definitely has those insecurities about like her skill versus the nepotism that Brashen provides, where it's like in reality, Brashen isn't doing that much. He's just making sure like she doesn't die so she can actually find her potential. Which like,
Right.
yeah. Which like, oh yeah, that reminds me. I appreciate Brashen being like proud of Althea at the start of this chapter so much, where he's like, yeah, she looked like the perfect ship's boy. Ever since she did like the skinning, she'd really come into herself. She'd done it. Like I hadn't. Like Brashen's like, I didn't think she would be able to do it. She did it. So proud of her.
Yeah.
And
I
now
like
we can keep sailing together, and things are gonna go great. It's gonna be an awesome time.
And we're gonna get married and live happily ever after.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we good to move to the next chapter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so next up we have chapter 26, Gifts. So this chapter is divided into two sections. The first is a scene between Paragon and Amber. Uh, one of the titular gifts is Amber makes this big beaded necklace for Paragon. Um, and they have an interesting conversation, but one that is uncomfortable for the both of them. Uh, and then the next section is Ronica, Kefria, and Malta, where we see the consequences of what happened in the previous chapter, where Rain sends Malta a dream box to formally begin courting her. Uh, and even though Ronica and Kefria don't want her to accept it, Malta decides to and officially begins courting Rain, I guess, TM.
I totally forgot that Amber makes Paragon a necklace. And I was so happy to read it because I just think it's really cute.
Me too, I love it. Except,
Especially how much he loves it.
I know, I think it's so freaking cute. I think it's also so, so sad that, like, nobody's ever given him anything. And, like, I feel like that's probably true for most of the live ships. Like, nobody considers them as fully being their own, like, being. Like, yes, they're alive, kind of, but because they sort of need people to, like, sail and everything, they're not independent and they're not, like, technically their own being, like, in other people's eyes. And so, like, I bet no one else has really gotten, no other live ship has really gotten gifts either, and it's kind of sad.
I feel like I remember some of the other live ships, like, because we know Vivacia like instinctually eats Wintrow's finger. Sorry for bringing that up again, but I know that like, I think that like when we hear about Ophelia having some stuff as well, and like I feel like I remember live ships just like
Eat
eating.
stuff?
Yeah, not usually not human flesh, but I think they eat and store like gifts that like people give them.
It's just funny, the idea of like, yeah, they just eat anything you give them.
Yeah, they're like babies.
Immediately in their mouth.
Mhm.
There are like so many little hints and clues to the fact that Paragon has like multiple identities in this chapter, because like we see his emotions and like his thought process go from like, Amber's so nice, she gave me a gift, I love her, to Amber has ulterior motives and what does she want from me, and
I can't trust anyone. Everyone's out to get me.
everyone hates me. Like, it's so up and down, and then at the end he's like a baby, almost like, did I break it, did I hurt it, can I have it back please? And even Amber points it out, like, she says, sometimes you speak and I hear the wisdom of generations in your words. Other times, without warning, you're a spoiled 10-year-old. And then it cuts to, like, a memory where it's like, you're 12 years old, you're almost a man. And it's, like, obviously, in hindsight, somebody yelling at Kennit. But it's like, when I first read it, I just thought he was crazy. But now when I read it, it's obvious that he has these, like, different personalities, basically.
He's got way too much, like, warring inside of himself.
And yeah, like the rapid mood swings is like such a hint that it's like that he's connected to Kennit. But it's also like such a subtle one, because I feel like how would you put that together? Even though like it's written the same way, but it's just not something you'd expect. Yeah, I feel like because you said earlier that you didn't like remember the scene, and I think I'm finding that to be true for like lots of the Paragon scenes, where like I think that some of the other like characters have like linear arcs, so it's easier to remember like, oh, this is this point on this is this point on that road. But for Paragon, the scenes are just sort of like interesting character interactions or like moments, and so I don't remember them as much, at least until like next book.
Yeah, same. I love the friendship between Amber and Paragon. And I feel like Amber can probably relate to Paragon a lot, and much more than I realized on my first read, even knowing that Amber was the fool, just because, like, Paragon is such an outsider, and the fool at Buckkeep, aside from like Shrewd and Fitz, really doesn't have people who are really in their corner and friends with them and actually talk to them. Like, everyone is kind of scared of them and thinks they're weird and like thinks they're like a freak of nature and everything like that. And I feel like that's kind of how people are towards Paragon in this like series trilogy.
Mhm. There's almost no one better for Paragon to develop a relationship with because there's no one that would be able to understand having those like dual identities the way that Amber could. Because Amber can be so many different people and like their true self is like kind of masked under all of these facades that they use to protect themselves. And Paragon doesn't really have the control to like use his identities to protect himself or to even like recognize them, but he has all these different versions like fighting inside himself.
Mm-hmm.
And like he even if he like can't effectively do it, like lots of his like thought processes are around like I need to protect myself. I can't let myself get hurt
Self-preservation.
again. Which
Right.
like definitely the fool like can relate with that. Even at this point in the series, before their two biggest torturings.
Ugh. Ugh.
Yay!
Poor fool.
Yeah, those are the sections I'm dreading reading about most in the other trilogies.
For me, it's Night Eyes and um yeah, when like Fitz has to leave the fool in the ice tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
The pale the pale woman. I kept wanting to say the ice queen, but that's not what she is. That's from like Narnia, I think. Or Ice Witch or something.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel like I'm not hit as hard by the Night Eyes thing, even though I care about it. But like like Fitz finding the fool's body just destroys me every time.
I
Yeah.
sobbed.
Mhm. I
Yeah,
love how
that
we're talking about sad things in other trilogies to avoid talking about sad stuff in this trilogy, you know?
That's because so much bad shit happens in this section.
Hmm. I guess before we get to the bad stuff, we do have this mostly good section of Malta getting the dream box, even though there's some bad stuff in it, but we know
it's
where it ends up, so it's fine.
I remember like even on this read because I kind of forgot how the dream box works, but I was like, why is Rain putting her in a sack and like kidnapping her? Like what the fuck? And then he's like, "Oh, that's what your like subconscious idea of courting is." And I was like, "Okay, I'm shifting my what the fuck from Rain to Malta."
Yeah.
And yeah, that doesn't feel like a Malta thing at all, especially given like how proactive she is and being like, I want I want all of them. I want to like go out and live my best bachelor life kind of thing.
I
But she's
feel
also, I
like
guess, like a hopeless romantic, and so
I
yeah.
I feel like she thinks of it as like a hunt and like she's on the hunt right now and it's kind of like a wild dance or like fight for dominance and she secretly wants to be dominated but she like
It's
needs
not
to
a way we should be talking about a 14-year-old.
no but that's exactly how I think that like
But
her subconscious is I think
No, no, yeah, I get what you mean.
but yeah
Yeah, I still don't. Speaking of like how the dream box works, like so, how does it work? I don't feel like there's another piece of Elderling technology that functions like this. Like when it first came up, I thought it was like similar to like the memory dust or the stuff that happens with like Timara and Rapskull, where it's like living out a memory through someone else's identity. But it's like it's it's not like as like it's malleable. Like they control what happens in it. So like I don't even know how that works.
I think like the way I
recent
pictured
elderly
it
shit.
is like it's skill in a box. It's like a skill dream in a box cuz like the way that Nettle would go into Fitz's dreams or fixed dreams and they can like communicate that way. I feel like the box somehow whatever magic's in it is like just a way to connect the two people via skill, and then they can communicate with each other. I don't understand how it's like whoever, is it just whoever opens the box, or is it set to that particular person? Like if someone else opened the box, would Malta still get the dream? Or
Because
would
Veronica's like talks about like it being attuned to a person, and when like and like
yeah.
I think Kefri was like, how does that work? And then Veronica's like, rain wild
I don't
magic.
know. Yeah. Because I think my first read, I thought like whoever opened it would get the dream. But this time I'm thinking more it's like specifically for Malta.
Yeah, I think that it is because he had to have some like personal item given to him from her in order to make the box in the first place.
What was the item? Was it just her name?
No, it was the cup. It was the glass of wine.
Oh, right.
Because she's
Oh,
like,
I
"Oh, do you
forgot
want this? I
that.
don't want it anymore." And he's like, "Yeah, of course I'll take it."
Yeah,
And then he takes it back with him and makes like the box.
I forgot about that. I remember her thinking about when they said like, oh, they need an item, so it means Malta gave him something. I was like, what did she give him? She stole his scarf.
Yeah.
But what did she give him?
Mhm. Because all I could think of is him asking her for her name.
Right. I think the him putting her in a bag and stealing her also shows the level of immaturity in Malta, because most adults would not think of anything that way.
Or think of it as being romantic and stuff.
Right. That's like a nightmare. But she's
Yeah,
like, ooh, someone thieved me.
Yeah.
it's like it's such like a fairy tale, but like
Mhm.
old ass fairy tale style thing.
It's like
Yes.
when the teenagers or like I don't think it's preteens, but definitely like high school age girls were like in love with Joe from You. And they were like
No, they
defending
were not.
and being like, "Oh my God, I
Wait,
wish
who
someone would
thinks he's
stalk me like
romantic?
this." Yes.
To the point where
Teenage
the
girls
actor had to tweet, like, he is
this
not a good
one thing.
person. He
Yeah.
is a serial killer.
But that's exactly how I mean, that's proof that that's how
Right.
teenage girls are. Like sometimes they think that
Yeah.
very, very unhealthy things are actually fine and like romantic. And so it makes sense why Malta would kind of think the same thing.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison.
That made me think of like the whole ass adults who are like big Chris Brown fans and are
Ugh.
just like,
Yeah.
mhm. Anyways, escapism and no relation to reality whatsoever.
One question that I have is, like, why it really bothers me that this whole book, the Vestrits are complaining about their finances. Meanwhile, they've got like 17 nannies for Selden and Malta when Kefri doesn't even have a fucking job. Kefri does nothing, but she can't take care of her own kids. They have to pay servants to do it. But you're so
I wonder
poor.
what she did before. Like, it's not like she even has friends come over and visit or
No.
anything like that. Like,
No,
she just sat in her bedroom and pined for her husband to come back.
I guess. Like, it's annoying to read these people complain about their finances, but then like continue to pay servants. Like, do shit yourself if you can't afford anything.
And the thing is, like, they don't have to pay, like, Nana shouldn't have to work anymore. She should be able to retire, and they should just have her stay in the house and, like, live with them as family and not have to pay her because she won't have to take care of the kids. She can just do what she wants. Kefri can take care of the kids for free, and then all they have to pay for is Rach.
Right.
Mhm.
Kefri is so useless. She can't even take care of her own kids.
Yeah.
Whenever the Vesters talk about finances, it makes me think about like that one drill tweet, like the one where it's like, "Please help me! I need to cut something from my expenses. My family is dying," and it's like electric 25, like the uh, food $30, video games $1,000, and it's just like
Yeah.
I saw one of those, but it was like candles were the extra. Like
yeah,
it was like 10 grand candles.
God me. I still have so many candles up here.
Or like when there was that whole when the media was like constantly trying to vilify millennials and they did those
Avocado
articles with, like,
toast.
avocado toast.
Oh
Yeah,
my
it was
God,
always like if only I could skip my avocado toast, I'd be able to afford a home.
Yeah, like it's the opposite for these people are the boomers who are like
Yep.
they've had enough to afford so many creature comforts, and then they're like, well, what am I supposed to do without them? I
I just spilled my water all over myself.
I've noticed you do that a little bit each time you drink. I'm like, oh
I
dear.
know, it's so bad. I need a straw. I cannot, like, I'm so bad at drinking out of cups.
I feel like a little bit. I feel like a little baby every time I drink out of this bottle, but also like I think it's just the safest option.
It goes, that time it went out both sides, too. It's like,
Yeah, that's rough.
Okay, one thing I did like about Kefria this chapter, while we're like shitting on her, Kefria like asks Ronica like, "What will you do?" and then she like changes it to, "What do you think we should do?" And like it's a small thing, but I like the growth of like being like, "Okay, I have to work with the family and take responsibility, and I can't just be relying on mommy dearest for everything."
Yeah, I like that too.
it's hard for me to like anything about her, but I will concede that that was a little bit of growth. A tiny bit.
Just a little bit as a treat. Yeah, my last note for the chapter is just like, uh, Malta mentions that she was making chamomile tea, and that is Julia's favorite tea. So even though there's like it's just an offhanded mention, I know that Julia will get a kick out of that. That's all.
I didn't even know that was real. Sometimes if I don't know what something is in these books, I just assume that it's made up.
Mm-hmm. Which like I feel like I did the opposite, where like with the Haragars, I'm like, I don't know this. I guess it must be a thing.
My last note is when Kefria and Ronica are talking about David, or I don't know what his name is. I can't say his name. I give up. But she's like, "Is it true about his son?" And she's about to like ask a question, and then she gets interrupted by something. And I don't remember if like we ever get an answer to what she was gonna ask, or if we find out what she was gonna ask. Do you guys remember?
I don't think so.
No,
No.
I think it just gets cut off.
My like speculation slash guess is maybe from like the context, maybe Devad's son was born like touched by the rain wilds in some way.
Yeah,
Oh, that
that's what
makes
I was
sense.
thinking.
Mm-hmm. I should give like additional context to why he's like rain wild sucks.
Mm-hmm.
My last note is so okay, there is one point where I did have to roll my eyes at Malta and she was getting a little bit annoying is when she sees the box and it's addressed to her from the Cooperses. The Cooper's crest is on the box. She knows what she did at the meeting. She talked to someone in front of the Cooper's like
Coach.
yeah. and she like goes through this ridiculous train of thought and is like, it must be Serwyn. Serwyn had to have sent this to me. I'm like, you are so dumb, you stupid little girl.
Yeah, that was stupid. But it did remind me of like the way you think about stuff when you're a teenager, where like someone will do the most minute thing and you're like, what if they meant this, which meant this, which meant this, which means they like me?
Yes, that's exactly. She could
Or
turn
they hate me.
around.
Or they
Yeah.
hate me. Yeah, just convoluted logic that makes zero sense.
Yeah. It was very wild.
Yeah, okay. With that, let's move to chapter 27. Prisoners. Uh, so the prisoners in question, this is another two-part chapter. The first is Wintrow being like, wow, guess I'm stuck being a slave, and if no one comes to get me in 2 days, I will be branded and sold as a slave of the satrap. Huh. Um, and then the other half is this is the first time we've seen Kennit since his leg got cut off. He's been in a fevered daze, and it turns out while he was out, Etta interrogated um, the members or like the I guess leadership of the slave ship they captured, killing two of them and blinding one of the others, um, and discovering that the truth about or like the idea of Vivacia being a slave ship, which of course Kenneth doesn't believe because he's fucking stupid. But
No, he's actually smart because he knows about live ships and he's like, that's ridiculous.
that's
Like,
fair. But I mean,
no
like,
live ship would ever become a slaver.
but stupid in the sense of like he's also like I think I remember him being like a foolish woman to just believe what they were telling you. Like they're obviously lying.
That was stupid.
Yeah. But yeah, those are like the two parts of this chapter.
The fact that Wintrow would possibly rather be a slave forever than like just be like, my dad's in the harbor, have him come get me, is like very telling to how miserable he was on Vivacia.
He's like, let's make a pros and cons list before taking this decision.
But also, he's so like this part I felt really frustrated with him because he's being so short-sighted. Like he could go back to Vivacia and wait until he's like considered an adult and then be like, I'm an adult now, I'm not doing this. Or even wait until like hold out for a couple years. Maybe Kyle will die. Selden will be old enough. Selden can teach Selden how to be on the ship and then go be back to be a priest. Whereas like if you're a slave forever. And he's like, would I rather go back to the boat for a couple years tops or be a slave forever? I don't know.
He straight up doesn't get. I think he still doesn't realize that he's like a slave despite everything. Because
Yeah.
like
He even thinks about the slaves like separate from himself.
he's like, oh, I kind of get why people think they aren't human, or like that they put themselves in this situation. I'm like, is there no character in this series who has like a reasonable take on human rights and slavery? Like not a single one.
Jesus.
It seems like only Amber.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
And
much.
she's not even a traitor or like related to the traitor families.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Wintrow was not on his A game this chapter.
It was annoying. But he realizes it like at the end. He has another part where he's like, I could have just waited a couple years and then tell my father that I could leave and I would have had Vivacia at least as a companion, and instead now I'm going to be a slave forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he realizes it after he's been tattooed.
Right, when it's way too late.
Oh yeah, this is the chapter where Torg comes through and is like, huh, So you're telling me that if no one comes to see him by tomorrow, he'll be sold as a slave to the satrap. Okay, interesting. Not sure what I'm going to do with this information. Yeah. Anyways, bye.
Yeah.
He's the fucking worst. I hate Turk, and I am so excited for him to die.
Me too.
I'm very ready. Does it happen?
I don't remember when it happens, but I do remember it being satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sure he dies at like the big fight at the end of this, or like the big like Kennit takes over the ship at the end of the book.
Yeah, I think so too.
I sure fucking hope so. I'm ready.
There's a part that links dragons and serpents. It is Wintrow's having a dream, and it says that his dreams are like populated with dragons and serpents that argued and pleaded with human tongues. And I was like, that's like the first overt time that they are connected in any way, those two.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that it happens in Wintrow's dream when Wintrow is like supposed to be the catalyst.
Yeah.
They actually get connected one other time, and it's at the very start when Wintrow is doing stained glass, because he talks about having the dragon and serpent.
And a serpent in the glass. You're right.
And it's Wintrow doing it then too.
Mm-hmm. Clues.
Yeah, I completely missed this time.
I got it too. I was like, I always home in on all of the stuff that has to do with dragons and like connecting them with the serpents. I eat that shit up.
Mm. God, like it's one of those things where like you can pass it off if as like, okay, yeah, Vivacia was talking about serpents, maybe he's dreaming that way, but like it's like so pointed. Like, where do the dragons come from? Like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, that was all of my notes for like the first half of it. Do we want to go to the Kennit part?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so the Kennit part starts with like Kennit waking up and still being like, why did they take my leg? Kennit, like Sorkor and Etta must be working together to take the ship. Like, he's like so fucking gone. He's like so paranoid and gone and just not thinking rationally.
I'm sure he also has a fever from his he's got an infection for sure. So he's probably got a fever from that, and it's making him even more paranoid and delusional than he actually like already was.
The detail when he like sees his leg and he says that part of it looked cooked. Literally, it's so gross. Like, Robin Hobb is really good at like visceral details that give me the ick.
I wonder how she did it. Like, do you think she's seen horrific things like this? Or do you think she's just very good at imagining stuff?
I don't know. I mean, like, I've definitely looked stuff up being a writer, trying to figure stuff out, but like, I can't imagine looking up like burned leg or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I feel like it might just be like a leg injury which she just added like embellishment details to.
Yeah.
Where it's like she's seen someone's leg crushed by a tree or something, and she just like extrapolated from there. Because I can think of like stuff that could happen, or like some sort of like motor accident or something where like someone's leg gets hurt. Yeah.
It gets ripped from their body.
Mm-hmm.
The only notes I have for this section is just about how much Kennit knows about live ships and traders and stuff, and the fact that he knows that Haven isn't a trader name. Like, it's such a big clue that he's in on it, because how else would he know? Like, nobody of the pirates for sure knows that Haven's not a trader name. I'm sure, like, it is only people who live or work very closely in Bingtown who would know something like that.
I picked up on that too because he doesn't even think about it for a second. He's just right away like, Haven's not a traitor name.
Yeah, he's like, they lied to you.
Yeah. It's such
And I
a big...
definitely, the first time I definitely like missed it because I was too busy being pissed about him, like being like they lied to you. You're so dumb. And I was just like, shut the fuck up, Kennit. But like, he's right.
Edda's smarter than Kennit is. And
For
he's
sure.
constantly like
He literally says like a woman of many talents and intelligent too. He'd probably have to kill her soon.
He thought like something similar about Sorkor when he like is thinking out loud and he's like, oh yeah, Sorkor is like getting too smart. I'll have to kill him soon. Or like he was thinking, he's like, oh, like it'd be such a waste to kill him now that he's like so loyal to me, but I might have to.
It makes me wonder how many people he's killed before just because he like...
But the thing is, he doesn't like violence and all of that stuff. So I wonder if he just thinks all those things because he thinks that's like what a pirate should do and like because he's paranoid, or if he's actually killed people and just used like poison or something. Even though I feel like he would think like regular poison, unless it's like a poisoned blade, would just be too like, you know how people think that like poison is a woman's killing thing, like he would probably have that view on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a good point because he doesn't like messy stuff and like murder's messy.
Mm,
Or violence.
unless you hire someone to do it, but like,
right.
I think his brand of murder is just push them overboard.
Right. Yeah.
Like who's the person he murders in the next book? Because like they're like rowing back for he stows Kyle away on his secret island, and he's rowing back with someone, and he kills
Doesn't
them.
he like drown them? He like holds them under with his stump leg or something.
Yeah, I don't even remember who it is.
I don't either.
I don't even remember that happening.
I forgot it happened, but you mentioning it brings like a vague memory back.
Mm-hmm. It's really funny because I remember in the moment thinking it was a character that was going to be slightly more important and being shocked that they died, and now I cannot even remember their name.
Whoop.
Yeah, I like that the charm bites Kennit. He deserves it. It's just like such a funny image of him being like, "Shit, not my charm," and it's just like nibbling at him, like, "Let me speak."
Picture it as having like sharp, pointy teeth, not
absolutely.
like regular people teeth.
Yeah, like little shark teeth.
Mm-hmm. Dragon teeth.
Oh, and while we're talking about Edda being smart, I noted like at the very end of the chapter, when Kennit like starts getting really feverish and tired, like Sorkor and people are like at the door, and she's like hops under the covers before they come in. And at first you think it's just like a modesty thing or whatever, but there's like a specific thing where she tries to like drape the blanket in a certain way. And one of the last lines we hear like Sorkor saying, it's like, wow, that's our Captain Kennit. He's going at her already, like lots of energy. And she's doing it to like, and then you realize she's doing it to like maintain his image and like prevent them from seeing that he's weak.
Mm-hmm.
Like he would like there's so much about like his image that he would lose if he wasn't lucky to have these people in his life around him.
Yeah.
Who just like set him up for success.
Definitely.
Yeah. And my last note was just last time, there's a scene with the charm reciting a poem to Edda, and Leah, you had the question of like, how the fuck does it know this poem if it's a dragon?
Mm-hmm.
And we like speculated that it has Kennit's memories. And this time he mentioned the musicians outside are playing the poem that the charm like sang to her, and Kennit's like, yeah, it's that poem. Do you know it, Edda? And Edda's obviously like, okay, yeah, you said this before, so like she just thinks that he's like fucking feverish, but it wasn't actually him; it was a charm.
Mm-hmm.
And it like confirms that like the charm must know it because he knows it.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, with that, can we move into the final chapter for this section?
Yes.
Okay, final chapter for this section, vicissitudes. I'm not gonna lie, I don't actually know the definition of that word.
Me
I don't
neither, and I didn't even bother to look it up.
Me neither.
Oh, okay. I came in here with the assumption that one of y'all would know it, so
No.
Okay, let's Google
I glazed
defines
over
it.
it.
our
It's
collective brain
change of
cell has failed us.
circumstances or fortune, typically one that is unwelcome or unpleasant.
Okay.
Okay, well that tracks.
hmm
And we definitely have that happening in this section.
Yeah,
This. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, because I had a note about how Brashen and Althea's fortunes have, like, flipped since we last saw them, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of like by
Mhm.
chance.
Vivacia's like monologue that she says to Gantry about like losing herself. And she says that she feels like she's someone else or something else, and the serpents make it worse. It makes me wonder if like the reason that they always need to have a family member on board is because that helps them stay in touch with like their
Human selves.
identity, yeah, or like their ship version of themselves. Because if that family member's not there to like override other personalities, then like their true dragon personality
Hard
would
to make
come
way
out.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense why, like, they would have family members on there. But, like, they obviously, like, the people don't know, and the live ships obviously don't understand, but, like,
They probably are just like, no, it's scary to not have a family member on. Like, we need it.
yeah.
So they've never tested it, or when they've tested it, it's been on Paragon, and they're just like, oh, well, he didn't have a family member on him, so.
hmm
I mean, which, like, speaking of Paragon, the way she talks about, like, dreaming is, like, so similar to every time we like, have a Paragon chapter intro, he's like, I can't sleep, but I'm in this endless sea of, like, memories and stuff.
Mm-hmm. And he thinks about the serpents a lot, too.
hmm Everything about her in this section screams Paragon. Like, she would have ended up exactly like him if they hadn't dragged Wintrow back. If Wintrow didn't come back, she
Yes.
would have gone mad. And she
She
says,
even
like,
warns it.
I'm not mad yet, or something like that. Like,
And
she
she
is
tells
very Paragon-esque. And then she's like rocking back and forth. Like, even though she's not voicing her fears and her emotions, like, it's clearly coming out in her, not like her, kind of like her body language and the body language of the whole ship.
Mhm.
She even warns Gantry. She's like, I like you. You should get onto a different ship.
Mm,
I didn't remember that part, and that part killed me. She really did like a "I like you, don't come to school tomorrow" type shit. Like,
yeah.
oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she 100% would have rolled over, killed her crew, and just sailed back in to
Yeah.
Bingtown.
Yep.
She would
I
have
wonder if
picked,
she would have just sailed in search of Wintrow. Like,
or no, she would have gone for Althea for sure because she
would she have
knows
gone
that
for
Winter
Althea?
doesn't want to be with her. So she'd be like, let me go to the one Vestrite who really truly loves me and try and find her.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
And then once she had Althea, she could find Wintrow and help him get back to his like monastery or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, I know. Don't get me wrong, I do hate Kyle. And I know everyone's so hard on him, like, he sold his son into slavery or he made his son a slave. But, like,
Everyone's so hard on him for selling his son to slavery. They just don't give him a break for it. Come on.
no, my point is that he doesn't really. I really don't think that he knew Wintrow was
It was
there.
Torg for sure.
And by the time that he gets bought, like, there's no... Torg says give him the ship tattoo, and maybe Kyle told him to do that, but it kind of seems like Kyle's just like, go buy him back. And then Torg picks him up, and Torg's like, how else can I be a shit to him? It could have all been Torg, and Kyle kind of takes the rap for it. But I think it was Torg.
We'll
No,
see this next episode. I think that there's some confirmation that Kyle asked Torg to, like, give Wintrow that tattoo.
Okay.
Which, like...
If that's the case, then, like... Yeah, like, sure. But, like... I don't know, I feel like the way people act about it is like he personally sold Wintrow into slavery, when really, like, he didn't know, and then he picks him up and he buys him back. But he's already a slave at that point. You know?
Fair.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Kyle's also a dick when he's like, I'll give you 5 shards for him.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was a shitty thing.
He's still a piece of shit. I'm not
Still
saying
hates his
anything
son.
other than that. But I just don't think that he truly, like, sold his son into slavery.
Mm-hmm. I think that I agree with that. I think that we should hate Torg more.
Yes.
I forgot that Torg existed before we started this reread,
Same.
and now I'm like, I'm never going to forget this motherfucker.
No, I hate
Same.
Torg.
Same.
My hatred goes Torg, Kennit, Kyle.
Interesting.
Torg is top of my list, but I don't know. I think Kennit and Kyle have to be even.
They oscillate for me, so it's hard to choose.
In the moment right now, it's Kennit Kyle for you.
Yeah, right. Today it is. A different day.
Depending on which way the winds blow, who knows?
Like, Kennet's more interesting to read, but I think he does worse things than Kyle does.
Yeah. But then there's the question of, like, Kennit does worse things, but he also has, like...
He also does
better reasoning for better, like...
better outcome things.
And,
Like,
not even that. Like, because he's forged, you can kind of understand it. While Kyle is just... There's no tragic backstory for Kyle. There's no... He's... Everything he does, he makes his own bed in everything he does.
Kyle's, like, deluded. Like, Kyle thinks that he's a good person and is, like, doing good for his family. Whereas Kennit has no illusions about the way he is.
I just realized something, you guys, about Malta.
What?
So, you know, at the end of the dream box dream, the, like, guy that she kisses...
I don't like where this is going.
...is a blonde, Palestinian-looking guy, which is like her dad.
Ew.
I know, but I just realized as we were talking about Kyle so much, because I'm like, oh, that's probably his child. What?
It makes sense because she has her dad on such a pedestal that, of course, she thinks that, like, somebody like her dad would be the perfect. Like, ew.
I just realized that. Isn't that so yucky?
Very Freudian.
Yeah. You're welcome, you guys. Yuck.
And when does Malta lose? Because I know that in Rainwelds, by the time, like, I feel like by the time we find out that Kyle is dead, she does not give a shit about him anymore. I don't even remember how that shift happens. Is it just like so much stuff happens in the middle that she just doesn't get a chance to think about her dad?
Well, I think even throughout her being, like, with the satrap and stuff, she's always thinking, like, oh, my dad will come and get me. He'll find me, like, he'll get people looking for me. And then, like, eventually she realizes that he's not out there looking for her and out there helping her or, like, trying to get her back. And that's when, like, it slowly happens. But I feel like she still thought of him as the highest in, like, the highest part.
During that time, she ends up on a ship full of Chalcidians or Chalcidians.
Oh, yeah.
And they're all awful. And, like, think of women in this horrible way, and she has to, like, constantly tell them that she's on her period so she doesn't get raped every day. And I think that, like, kind of shifts her perspective on that group of people, because she's like, this is the view of women that my dad has.
Yeah,
You know?
definitely.
Oh wait, I think by that point she actually thinks her dad is dead.
I
Because
don't think
they
they
get
find
news
out.
in they get news in Bingtown before they even go to the Rain Wilds. They get news in Bingtown that Kennit has captured Vivacia, right?
I don't know.
I don't think they hear about it for a really long time.
Okay.
And when they do, I don't think they assume that he's dead. I feel like they don't
Okay.
really find out until, like, the end of the whole series.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I haven't read this book in 2 years, so.
Same. Except not 2 years. It's like less than a year. But with accounting for my memory, it's about the same.
Well,
My
we'll
first
find out
only read
eventually.
was probably 6 years ago. So I'm over here like reading everything fresh. I'm like, oh, this is such an interesting book. So good.
My last note for this chapter is just in a episode with so much sad stuff, the line that most got to me was Brashen being like, she knew him so well she had wanted nothing further to do with him. Thinking about Althea. I'm just like,
Yeah, that's freaking
I
sad.
feel like that's a very Fitz thing to think.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
but it must suck because like Brashen, it feels like it's so weird because we were told that Brashen had like a bad life before or like had been in his in the worst place. And we see him start at the top of his like redemption and then just fall back into everything, into like self-loathing, into having no friends. And it's just like, man, it's just the worst. I hate it.
Yeah. It's very sad.
Wait, no, isn't that why they send like isn't wait, I'm just thinking back, like isn't the whole reason they like refit Paragon is to set out to find Vivacia?
Yeah.
Because they get I think they get news of it or of the capture like a quarter way through Madship, and that's what starts them. Like
But Brashen sees a painting of Vivacia, or that like used to be in Althea's stateroom or something, at a pirate market. So that's how he figures it out. I remember that much. But I'm pretty sure they're like, well, we'll never catch her with anything other than another live ship, so.
mhm.
Why not the mad one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that like Malta just doesn't believe it at that point.
Yeah.
She's just like, you Althea's horrible. She's saying that my dad's dead because she wants like I think she thinks something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Oh yeah, that also reminds me. There's a scene with where Malta flirts with Brashen. Dude,
Oh,
Forgot
yeah.
about
And
that.
Brashen the whole time is like, this is gross.
Hmm?
yeah, Brashen doesn't like get it at first, and then he's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah. Brashen has like it's like the only time that an adult man reasonably responds to Malta in this whole book. Like,
Yes.
Brashen reacts the way an adult man should react.
Mhm.
Whereas even her own father's like, look at her figure.
So fucking
There's
gross.
like a line in this chapter where she's thinking about like, "Yeah, Dad said I have like a woman's body. Why shouldn't I have like?" And it's like,
It's so
Your
gross.
dad should not be thinking about or looking at your woman's body.
mhm.
Right.
Yuck.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Cool. I like ending on the note of lots of awful stuff already and lots of awful stuff to come. Yeah.
Yep.
At
We're
least
getting close to the finish line. Like,
yeah,
I know, it's wild.
only that
I
much
think
book
that
left.
yeah, I think we have 2 more episodes if I remember right. So
Yeah, that
Think
sounds
so.
right.
We have, I think there are 36 chapters plus probably an epilogue.
mhm,
So yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, 36 chapters. I don't think
I don't
there's
remember what happens in between.
there's no epilogue, but the 36th chapter is literally like 2 pages.
Ah, okay.
Oh dang.
It's the
So
serpent chapter.
Hmm.
so we'll only have, should we just try and cram it into one?
29 to 36.
That's kind of a lot, right? Should we divide it and do like 29
We
to
can do 4 and 4.
32?
So next
Yeah, let's do 4 and 4.
Okay.
okay. So yeah. Next time we'll be back with chapters 29 through 32. Of Ship of Magic. I honestly do not remember anything that happens in the next section because in my memory, it's Wintrow gets tattooed as a slave. The next chapter, Kennit attacks, and it's just like
Yeah.
so.
Well, it can't be too far between because Wintrow has a hand in nursing him back to health. For sure.
Yeah. And they like do a second amputation or like a
Yep.
thorough actual amputation, not just a
He cut off the cooked bits of
half
his leg.
eaten. Yeah, yuck.
Mm. But yeah, okay. Until next time, see y'all.
Bye.
Bye.